He's behind cover at 10,000 feet, lungs burning in thin air, and the man he needs to kill is 500 meters away. The M4 in his hands was built for close and medium-range fighting, for shadows, doorways, the kind of war that happens inside a city block. Here, there are no city blocks. There are ridgelines, dry riverbeds, open ground that runs forever in every direction. He fires. The 5.56 round leaves the barrel at nearly 3,000 feet per second. At this range, in this altitude, against a fighter who has spent his entire life in these mountains, it arrives with about as much authority as a strong shove. The target doesn't fall. The target fires back, from behind a boulder with a PKM machine gun, and the burst kicks up rock and dust 6 inches from the soldier's face. He needs something that reaches, something that hits. And in the rack back at the firebase, still wrapped in cosmoline from a depot shelf that hadn't left since 1968, there is an answer. In 1964, the Pentagon ordered the M16 as the M14's replacement. And by 1967, the M14 was officially replaced as the standard service rifle. The Army had moved on. The Pentagon had decided the future was smaller, lighter, faster, and that the wars ahead would be fought up close, in jungles, in cities. For 40 years, that assumption went mostly unchallenged. Then the United States sent its soldiers into the Hindu Kush, and the Hindu Kush sent them back to a rifle they had already thrown away. To understand why, you have to understand what the Taliban learned. And what they learned was precise, patient, and deadly. The Taliban and al-Qaeda fighters who dug into the mountains of Afghanistan in 2001 and 2002 were not new to this ground. Many of them had fought the Soviets here through the 1980s. They had watched a superpower bleed out in these valleys for a decade. They had learned what the mountains could do for a lightly armed guerrilla force, and they had built their entire tactical doctrine around one central fact. The Americans carried short rifles that fired small bullets, and those bullets ran out of energy fast. A U.S. Army study eventually confirmed what every veteran of early Afghan firefights already knew in his gut. Only about half of small arms engagements in Afghanistan fell within 300 meters. The envelope American troops had trained and equipped for. The rest pushed further, considerably further. Veterans reported firefights playing out consistently at 500, 600, 700 meters. The insurgents had mapped the effective range of an M4 carbine the way a boxer maps the reach of his opponent. They exploited terrain and standoff distances that pushed the fight beyond where the 5.56 remained lethal. They would fire from a ridgeline, drop behind cover, wait for the Americans to exhaust their fire, and disappear before artillery or air support could respond. The mountains gave them time. The Americans' ammunition gave them a ceiling. And it worked, because the rifle America had spent 40 years insisting it didn't need was sitting in storage. The M16 and its descendant, the M4, were solutions to a specific problem. That problem was Vietnam. In the triple canopy jungle, fights happened inside 50 meters. The enemy was close and fast. A soldier carrying a heavy battle rifle in 7.62 mm stumbled through dense undergrowth, soaked through, fighting at arm's length. The army wanted something lighter, something that let a soldier carry more ammunition into a jungle that swallowed men whole. The M16 was that something. And it was a reasonable answer to a reasonable question. A small caliber, high-velocity round in a lightweight platform. The Army sidelined the M14 and pressed forward. What nobody planned for was Afghanistan. Not in 1964, and not really in 2001 either. The first American forces to arrive in significant numbers went in expecting something manageable, a follow-on to a campaign the Special Operations community had already mostly won with Northern Alliance militia and precision airstrikes. What they found instead was a landscape that had been eating armies for 3,000 years. No trees, no concealment, valleys that stretched for miles in every direction, ridgelines that looked down on everything. The mountains didn't just favor the defender, they multiplied him, gave him eyes and elevation and time. And American infantry arrived at the bottom of those ridgelines carrying M4 carbines with 14.5-inch barrels built for close urban fighting, not open mountain terrain. The 5.56mm round fired from an M4 degrades quickly. At distances beyond 300 meters, it loses velocity fast enough that terminal performance becomes unreliable. At 600 meters, the difference between the 5.56 and a full-power 7.62 round is not a matter of efficiency, it is a matter of physics. At 600 meters, a 7.62 NATO round carries roughly 4 times the energy of a 5.56. 4 times. A veteran who deployed to Oruzgan province in 2005 described it plainly. The enemy maintained a standoff distance of at least 600 yards. And at that distance, the 5.56 from the M4 short barrel demonstrated what he called lackluster terminal performance. That is the careful language of a man who watched his rifle fail him. The Army studied the problem and confirmed it. And then, somebody in a depot somewhere opened a crate from the 1960s and started stripping cosmoline off rifles that had never been supposed to matter again. Thousands of M14s came out of storage. The Army and Marine Corps rebuilt them, accurized them, mounted optics on them. They became what planners called Designated Marksman Rifles. That title was careful and bureaucratic. What it really meant was, one man in every squad who could reach out to the distances the M4 could not, and land a round that actually stopped what it hit. One man with a 40-year-old rifle, built for a war everyone thought was over. The M14 fired the 7.62 2x51 NATO cartridge, just over 9 pounds empty. A 20-round box magazine, effective to 800 meters in the right hands. The Army's standard 175-grain M14 long-range load delivered 4 times the energy at extended ranges as the 5.56 service round. That was not a specification. That was the difference between a bullet that persuades and a bullet that decides. The rifle was built on the bones of the M1 Garand, the weapon General George Patton had once called the greatest battle implement ever devised. It inherited the Garand's gas-operated action, its reliability in dirt and cold and heat, and its fundamental philosophy, that a fighting rifle should deliver a full-power cartridge at the distances where battles actually happen. The Army had added a detachable 20-round magazine, a selector switch for automatic fire, and a longer, effective range than anything the standard infantryman had carried before it. When it was fielded in 1959, it was briefly the most capable battle rifle in the American inventory. Then Vietnam happened, and the jungle won, and the M14 went into storage, where it sat until mountains rediscovered its purpose. The designated marksman role the Army created around the reissued M14 was not a sniper program. A sniper works independently, often hundreds of meters from the nearest friendly soldier, with a bolt-action rifle optimized for a single, precise shot at extreme range. The designated marksman works inside the squad. He moves with his unit. He is the man between the standard rifleman and the dedicated sniper. The one who can engage at 400 meters when the rifleman's M4 runs out of authority, and the dedicated sniper is supporting a different element 2 ridgelines away. Every time a designated marksman walked off a firebase with an M14 over his shoulder, he carried a rifle optimized for Europe, modified for Vietnam, discarded by a peacetime bureaucracy, and resurrected by a mountain range that had never read the procurement memo. In July 2008, 48 American soldiers were holding combat outpost Kaler near the village of Wanat in Nuristan province. They had been there 9 days. The outpost was new, barely established, surrounded by mountains that rose in every direction. On the morning of July 13th, before full light, approximately 200 Taliban fighters moved into position on the surrounding high ground. They had been planning the assault for months. They had watched the Americans construct the outpost. They knew the fields of fire. They knew the distance from the ridgelines to the perimeter. They attacked from 3 sides simultaneously, with PKM machine guns, RPGs, and AK-47 fire from elevated positions that gave them angles the Americans had almost no answer for. What happened at Wanat made the papers because of M4 stoppages, weapons overheating under sustained fire, and malfunctions at critical moments in the fighting. 9 soldiers died, 27 were wounded. The story of the stoppages was real, but it was one part of a larger problem. The outpost was badly sited, the positions were poorly prepared, and leadership had been warned of the threat for months. All of that was true. It was also true that Taliban fighters were firing down from positions the M4 could not reach with reliable lethality, and soldiers in the open were trying to fight back up a hill against entrenched fighters who had the elevation. Staff Sergeant Eric Phillips' M4 quit firing entirely. Specialist Chris McKeag fired 12 magazines in 30 minutes before the weapon overheated to the point he could not charge a new round into the chamber. He threw it down. The positions the Taliban occupied were 600 meters away. 700. The M4 was a weapon for 300 meters, maybe 400 in the right conditions. The Taliban had done the math before the first RPG was fired. Where the M14 existed that morning, it mattered. The designated marksman concept had been built precisely for this. One soldier with a rifle capable of reaching the distances the Taliban had chosen to fight from, capable of landing a round with enough energy at 500 or 600 meters to end a fighter's ability to continue the fight. The 7.62 round did not lose its authority the way the 5.56 did. At 600 meters, it still carried roughly 1,000 foot-pounds of energy, equivalent to what the 5.56 delivered at 100 meters. 100 meters. The gap was not a matter of degree. These were 2 different weapons for 2 different wars. Only the arrival of AH-64 Apache gunships and field artillery prevented the complete destruction of Outpost Kaler. Air power saved the day at Wanat, the way air power saves days when the ground weapons are wrong for the ground. But before the helicopters arrived, before the guns found their range, it was men on a perimeter in the dark with whatever they carried. And what the Taliban understood, and had understood since before the first patrol, was that the American standard-issue rifle was optimized for a different mountain, a different war, a different geometry. Wanat was not a failure of American courage. It was a geometry problem. The Taliban solved it on the ridgeline. The soldiers solved it with air support. The men who fought there paid the price that lives in between every unsolved geometry problem. The Taliban and al-Qaeda had not invented this approach. The mountains had been teaching it for generations. In the 1980s, Soviet forces in the same country had faced mujahideen who used terrain the same way, who fired from ridgelines and mountainsides at ranges that neutralized Soviet advantages in firepower and mobility, then melted away before the response could arrive. The Soviets lost roughly 15,000 men in Afghanistan. The terrain did not change between 1989 and 2001. The tactics did not change. What changed was the flag of the foreign army in the valley below. By 2003 and 2004, American after-action reports were documenting a consistent pattern. The insurgents avoided close contact. They engaged at ranges where America's standard service rifles lost their effectiveness. They used the distances the way a chess player uses the board. It had nothing to do with courage. It was arithmetic, and the arithmetic was correct. America's 5.56 round at 600 meters, their PKM at 600 meters. One of those engagements ends with the American firing into the dirt short of his target. The other ends with the American dead. They knew it. The after-action reports confirm they knew it. The behavior was consistent and documented across multiple provinces, multiple years, multiple units. What they could not have planned for was the response from a country that doesn't throw away a good answer just because it's old. When the Army pulled M14s out of storage and put them into the hands of designated marksmen, it was not romanticizing the past. It was solving an equation. The rifle that had been set aside in the 1960s, replaced by a lighter weapon for a lighter war, turned out to have been ahead of its time in a landscape nobody was thinking about. The 7.62 NATO cartridge is not a modern answer. It is an honest answer. It goes where it is pointed. It hits what it reaches. At the distances Afghanistan demands, that is not a refinement. That is the whole conversation. This is the thing about American military history, that the procurement decisions and press releases never quite capture. The American soldier has always been asked to fight on ground nobody fully prepared him for. The M14 was declared finished because the Pentagon expected the next war to look like the last one. The Taliban expected the same thing and built their entire doctrine around the assumption that the Americans would show up with M4s and know where to use them. Both were partially right. The Americans did show up with M4s, and the Americans also showed up with rifles that had been designed before either side of this conflict was born, pulled from storage, fitted with modern optics, and handed to the one man in every squad whose job was to solve the problem the others couldn't. The M14 is still in service, not as a relic, not as a curiosity, as a fact. It is still in service because some rifles are not built for a specific war. They are built for a specific truth about what a round needs to do when a man's life depends on it traveling far enough and hitting hard enough. The Taliban knew that truth. They built their tactics around it. And 40 years after the army decided the M14 was finished, it was the M14 that proved them wrong. If this is the kind of history you want to go deeper on, subscribe. There is more where this came from.